So this evening, I'm thrilled to be having a chat with Beth Butterwick, who is CEO of the great clothing brand Jigsaw. You've been CEO for the last couple of years there, is that right?
3 years. And
3 years.
it's lovely to meet you, and thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you this evening.
No, well, it's a pleasure, and thank you for agreeing to talk to me. So can you tell me a bit about your background, and how you first sort of got interested in the fashion industry?
Yes, absolutely. I think probably as a sort of a young teenager, I was always fascinated with clothes as a weapon of self-expression. I went to a very academic girls' school and managed to persuade the school actually for me to do GCSE and A-level art outside the school at the local technical college. And really from the age of 15, I was making all my own clothes. And again, this was this whole self-expression thing. I think probably when I told my parents, having got 3 really good A-levels, that I wanted to be a fashion designer, they had higher aspirations for me. But my father was very sensible and allowed me to explore this course. And so I went to Chelsea School of Art straight from school. I had the most wonderful year there. I was actually really good at illustration as well. So at some stage I thought, will I go into graphics? Will I do fashion? But I mean, really, that sort of my whole fashion sort of passion prevailed, and I ended up going to well, my father was again very, very clever because he persuaded me to do a fashion degree with marketing or business studies. 4-year degree, and in the third year you had to go and do a placement somewhere. And I went to work for Marks and Spencer, had the most phenomenal time. And once I was earning money, it was really difficult to go back and do my final year, which I did. But it meant that I had secured myself a place on their graduate training scheme, which, 25, 30 years ago was the 5-star retailer, Marks and Spencer. So that was really how it all started. I think it was my early enjoyment of clothes as a self-expression and making all my own things and making clothes for friends as well. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, you think back to the pop stars and the musicians of that era. I mean, there was certainly some really interesting sort of fashion coming out of that time. I think I lived in a really exciting era, actually, quite frankly.
Absolutely. And how does it compare? How does working with Jigsaw compare or differ from your previous sort of appointments as CEO? Were you a CEO of Karen Millen?
Yes, I was. So I think Karen Millen was as a global brand, 56 countries, 275 shops, every single, well, all 6 continents. I think the thing is, and obviously I had CEO roles before then, I think when you go into a new brand, every brand has a unique DNA, and it's understanding the secret ingredients of that company and what makes that business special is a very, very important thing to explore at the beginning. So obviously Karen Millen and Jigsaw have a very different outlook on style and fashion, as do their customers. The customers are sort of nuanced in a very different, subtle way. So I think those are probably customer and brand understanding are the first 2 most important things to sort of get to grips with, and that's what I always do as a formula when I go into new businesses. And then businesses will have a different degree of areas of focus. So Karen Millen was very much about stabilizing the international business and growing it, and Jigsaw has been all about retrenching back to the UK. It's a 53-year-old brand. It was actually one of the first bridge brands, premium bridge brands in the UK. John founded it in the 70s. And we're re-establishing Jigsaw as a place to go for responsible design. Jigsaw's never been this about fast fashion. It's always had a beautiful quality and sort of a luxury technique to all its styling. And so it's different in that way, really. Although actually for every business, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, the macro environment is challenging, quite frankly, wherever you are. So there will be similar themes across businesses.
Yes.
When I say to my retail colleagues about what we're all coping with externally.
Yeah. Jigsaw is known for its commitment to sustainability and ethical practices. Have you sort of, how have you sort of incorporated that into these values into the company?
Well, it's interesting, ethic and sustainable, isn't it? It's a buzzword at the moment, but I think one of the things that Jigsaw has always been, and I think it goes back to John's ethos about style over fashion. Jigsaw's always been a responsible brand because it believes in slow fashion. It designs products that last the test of time. I don't know whether you do, but I've got Jigsaw products in my wardrobe from about 25 years ago, and they're
yes,
a little bit.
I love it all and wear it time after time. And
Absolutely. And so from that point of view, that we need to get better at communicating. Jigsaw has always stood for buy something, invest in it, and wear it many different ways and enjoy it for many years. In terms of what we're doing more overtly in the business at the moment, well, in terms of manufacturing, we resource all our fabrics. Most of them are ethically sourced. So we work with the Good Cashmere Guide to source ethical cashmere, as we do with the wool company. All our denim is pre-washed, and so none of the waters that the dye waters go into the rivers. We only work with recycled polyester. I know some people would say, well, why do you work with polyester at all? But polyester actually is a fantastic fabric. If you want to go away, you can just pack polyester up, and it's got a silk-like feel, and it just comes out crease. So there's a whole initiative around fabrics. We work with ethically sourced Pima cotton, but then in terms of our stores and our fixtures and fittings and the new stores that we're actually opening, we call them eco boutiques because we have had in the past 76 shops. We closed a few, and we've now got about 45. All those incredible fixtures and fittings that John procured many years ago have been brought back to our warehouse. They've been recovered, they've been reloved, they've been refitted. And so we're repurposing those back into our shops as well. We work with local builders so that we're really supporting local communities. And we're always very considerate and careful. I mean, many of Jigsaw's buildings are actually buildings, old banks. And we work very carefully with local councils to make sure we're restoring buildings in a beautiful way. All our web packaging, we moved to paper, cardboard, 2 or 3 years ago, actually just shortly after I joined. All our plastic that the garments come in to protect them from the suppliers and in the warehouse are recycled bags. Wow. All our rubbish and recycling in the warehouse is taken away and doesn't go to landfill. It's disposed of responsibly. So in actual fact, as I see it, we've got many different initiatives through the business that really drive this responsible retailing ethos. And I think it's up to every single colleague in our business to respect that and play their part in making sure that we stay that way. And we tell our customers about what we do as well. Yeah. So lots of great things going on.
Amazing. I think you win that sustainability and ethical practices award. Definitely.
About that. Are we doing enough? No, we're probably not actually. In fact, I'm on a board of advisors with the British Fashion Council on really championing net zero globally by 2050. And that is a challenge because we've got emerging countries who are sort of several steps behind. Yeah. But we're looking at better education in fashion colleges around slow fashion. We're looking at bringing manufacturing back to the UK. That's all disappeared about 25 years ago. We're looking at better recycling centres, better technology to help. I mean, if you think about the food business and when you do your weekly shop, certainly there's still way too much packaging that we throw.
Much. Yeah.
So I think we've started the journey. We're talking about it, but there's always room for improvement at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But we need.
What are? Sorry, I've got something come up on my screen. Oh God. Wait a second, I'm so sorry. There you are. You're back again. So what would you say the biggest trends are that you see shaping the fashion industry in the coming years?
Well, we've spoken about ESG, and we're actually applying for B Corp status at the moment. I actually think with slow fashion will come more responsible, purposeful profit. And if you think fast fashion retailers that some of the young talk about, whether it's Shein or Boohoo or ASOS, why can't businesses feel comfortable with, you know, a £5 or a £10 million profit rather than £100 million profit?
Yeah.
That's a significant investor mindset to sort of shift. I think slow fashion, fewer things, and having them for longer and repurposing them in many different outfits is definitely a theme. That those are just sort of consumer and brand trends, and then you've got bigger macro trends around more agile models. If you think about it, the world is a very precarious place at the moment. You know, you've got cost rises, you've got changing consumer habits, and actually consumers driving what brands need to be, and then you've got profit and sanity over vanity. So I think those are all the macro things driving some of the worry about. So agile models means making sure that you're flexible in your approach, you're sourcing closer to the season. I think one of the interesting things that we're talking as an industry about at the moment is the future of China, with the rumblings of this sort of standoff between the USA and China, and whether or not, if there were something to happen, where would we source product from? Because, you know, I know people don't like made in China labels, but some of the finest products in the world come from China, some of the finest fabric in the world, cashmere, silk. If we weren't able to source from China anymore, we would have to try and develop those fabrics elsewhere. So something that we're actively talking about at the moment. It's a challenge. We've had 10 or so years since 2011, the crash, the Lehman Brothers crash, and the aftermath of that, and then we've obviously had the pandemic. So we're a resilient lot in retail.
Yes,
we seem to balance.
You've had to be.
What about a permanent day? And I think it's so true. There's always something going on now. You just have to lean in.
It's been a tough 10 years or so, hasn't it? Or longer. So Jigsaw has got a very strong presence in the UK. Do you have plans to expand it more in other areas of the world?
Yes, Jigsaw was a global brand actually until just before the pandemic. Just before the pandemic, we came out of menswear and children's wear, and we came out of the States and Australia where we had shops. They weren't particularly profitable locations. We had very big, expensive stores there, as actually have quite a lot of other traditional retailers done in the, like Karen Millen. That was the model then. We wanted to concentrate on the UK because we've done a piece of work that identifies what we call a bullseye customer group. So within the 22 million female UK's 18 upwards in the UK, we've got a small share of that, and there's an opportunity to grow our share of customers. So you always want to be strong and focus on your home market before you wear. Now, since then, about 6 weeks ago, we did an integration on our website, so anyone can buy from around the world now. Jigsaw. We don't have physical space yet. We're seeing some really, really interesting trends. Not surprisingly, Australia and America are the most dominant in terms of sales. But absolutely, you know, I get emails quite a lot from expats and also people that have known natives to those countries that have known Jigsaw before. We absolutely will go back into those locations within the next 3 or so years. It's just working out how we do it profitably and which partners we go with.
Yes, yeah. So Beth, you've had sort of leading positions in several different companies. What lessons would you say you've learnt along the way with all these companies, and how do you sort of apply them in your role as CEO of Jigsaw?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that even though I've had a wonderful career in retail for 30 years, I am actually still a student of retail. And the reason I say that is because one's always learning. And know what, hopefully we'll get on to a career in retail through as our chat progresses. But you're always learning new things in retail, and we've spoken about some of the challenges of the past 10 years. I think the consistent things that I've learned and probably amplified and honed in and tuned over the course of my sort of 15 years or so of being CEO in various companies is, and we spoke about it, it's really important to get to know that brand and why others and what its unique pillars are. It's really important to understand customers. It's really important not to try and chase new customers at the expense of your existing customers, which you should absolutely love and cherish and put first. I think we've talked about adapting, agility, thinking about macro environments, thinking about the models of those businesses. I think probably the biggest thing I've learned is people are absolutely inherent to the success of a company. And if you can't inspire and lead your workforce and get them to go the extra mile and reward them when things go well and celebrate little things,
Yes.
they progress. So I think probably the biggest thing I've learned is the power of people and how much they need to be nurtured and rewarded.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's very, very true, isn't it? Would you say your management style has changed over the years? Well, I suppose as you learn, you know.
Yes, I probably perfected it. I mean, I've worked in some really interesting companies, so I think probably some of the things I've learned most of all is cultural nuances in different companies. You know, Marks and the bastion of the British High Street, and you know, it was a very British organisation. I then went to Gap, where I not only had to learn essentially a sort of American language, but my head office was in LA, which is eight hours away. So it was always on, and Americans are always on, and they just like to get stuff done straight away. I then went to Holland, where I was improving a business for sale process, and the Dutch very much go to work to live. So I didn't have a team that actually worked 5 days a week, and I went in Gap ethos, which was, come on guys, we're just going to get it done. And that down so well, and I had to learn that I had to pull back and find a different way of engaging people and entrusting them into my people for them to sort of go the extra mile. Then I've been in Yorkshire, and that's different in itself, running Bon Marché, and that was a wonderful experience. And actually in itself, that customer was typically sort of 65 to 70. And you know, get to that age, and I think about my mother-in-law and my mother, you know, they don't hold back in saying what they think. And neither do that customer group.
There's no filter.
Sometimes that's the one filter. So so that was interesting. So yeah, I think my management style has changed most, not only from experience, but also appreciating it's really important to respect culture to get the best out of people.
And you know, you're on the board, you're a board member on several with several other companies. How do you balance all your responsibilities across the different organizations? You must be literally chasing your tail.
If you were my husband, he'd say she doesn't, because she works full non-stop and never switches off. And I think that's probably because I love what I do so much. So I'm an advisor on boards. I'm not a board director, but I tend to get involved in things that are passionate to me. So I'm on advisory board with Retail Week on developing young people coming into the fashion industry and mentoring them, and I love that. Equally, I'm on the development board of my daughter's old school. And I think education is such an important part of giving anyone confidence and the skills to sort of go out and be the best they can be in what is a very different and difficult macro environment. And that's very rewarding. I'm also an advisor on an incredible software platform business that actually IPO'd last year, and that's interesting. And they've taken me on for my retail skills because they're techies. But what I get back is I'm not, I'm not as technical as the 22-year-olds in my office, but I'm learning new tricks. So
Yes,
that's what I love as well. And it comes back to this retail, you can learn new things. So I think the answer is that I get involved where I can give back, where I can help, and I get involved in things that really interest me. And I think that's how you make it all happen, I think, probably.
I think if you love it, then it's easier, isn't it?
Exactly.
You love it. Yeah. So what advice do you think you could give any young people who are interested in pursuing a career in fashion or retail? Is there any key advice you sort of
well I think
could offer?
if I think I've got a 20-year-old and a 22-year-old, and I think if I think back to the advice that I give them, is first of all, work hard at school, because it really is worth it. These days having a good set of results can go the extra mile out. I was very lucky, and we'll go back to the bit I told you about having my passion for clothes and styling, this curiosity around self-expression. I loved, my passion was clothing from about 13 or 14. So I was very lucky. Wow. I knew what I wanted to do. I would say lean into every opportunity. Don't think that's the road, that's the course I'm going to take. If something comes along and it's a bit left ball, go for it. Take risks, new things. The worst that can happen is, I can remember when I told my husband we were going to go and live in Amsterdam, and he said, I don't want to go there. And I said, well, I'm going with the children without you. And within, by the end of it, he said, well, why are we leaving? I love it here. But he doesn't really like. But, had I not actually taken that risk and said, yes, I'll go for that job in Amsterdam, the children would have never have had 3 incredible years in a Dutch school. If I hadn't have accepted the gap role, and I've left, I'd stayed at Marks and Spencer, and I would have been there 30 years by now. I wouldn't have had 3 amazing years of doing 3 weeks in London, 3 weeks in LA, 3 weeks in New York. When I was in New York, actually, I sort of felt like Sarah Jessica Parker walking the streets of, it was as good as I was going to get living abroad.
It was brilliant. I love New York.
Fantastic. So, yes. So really do say yes to everything, because the worst that can happen, it doesn't work out and you just go on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think you tried.
Authenticity is a really important word as well. And some people are born with it. My daughter's very, very good at saying what she thinks in really difficult situations, but she does it in a kind way, and she does it as if it's, it comes from the heart. I learned it slightly later on, I think, being able to sort of speak the truth and say how you feel. But that's very important, because otherwise, if you go to a company where you're trying to be one thing and really at home you're another thing, that role's never going to work out for you, because you're not yourself. And then
you've got to be honest with yourself, haven't you?
You've totally got to be. Listen to your gut. Listen to your gut in an everyday situation or a big career decision-making situation. We don't really listen to our gut much, do we? And actually, when you look back, gut was right, not head. So
true, that, isn't it? I remember being told something, always do what your tummy tells you. Yes. If it feels you feel a bit funny in your tummy about it, a bit butterfly, then you probably, better not.
Absolutely. So yes, my simple tips, I think, really, and actually
very good.
Try and apply myself at times when I'm not sure about something.
Yeah. And Beth, so going sort of to your more private life, what outside work are your sort of, I don't know, passions, interests, hobbies and things? What do you enjoy doing?
Well, we've got a house in Norfolk, which is where I am now. It's by the coast.
Lovely.
I can just see the sea out of the window, but I can see the golf course as well, and I might be able to see my son and husband walking past in a minute.
How lovely.
I've got 3 dogs, and honestly, my soul space is up here, just to be able to walk down to the beach in 5 minutes and clear the head on a Friday evening, or, you know, we pop up here for the weekend. It's absolutely fantastic. So I would say my family and my dogs and being in Norfolk is definitely
Yes.
a passion and an interest. And then I love culture, and I think probably, you know, fashion and arts and culture are all sort of intermingled. So I love going to museums and galleries and the ballet and the theatre. I love traveling to different countries and exploring new cultures. I mean, I still about getting to Heathrow at 5 a.m. to go on a plane. It's crazy, isn't it, with work? I was in Dubai recently, and it's just such a fascinating country. I've been going there for 15 years, and it's changed so much. So travel and culture, really important.
Yeah.
And then maybe it's this curiosity thing, but trying new things. 2 years ago, we climbed Scarfell Pike. Last year, I Palace to Palace 75k cycle ride. This year, I'm doing it again, and I'm doing the coastal mighty walks for Cancer Macmillan. That's 26. That's a marathon, a walking marathon. So outdoors important to me. So I love trying new things as well. So yeah, I think when I can fit things in, and then obviously underlining all of that is spending time with my family. We've got quite a big family between us, and my friends. I think that's really important.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, doing all those things not only help you sort of step out of your work life, and they give you perspective on looking back
It's
in.
good for you, isn't it? To sort
It's
of have...
I think it's brain nourishment, I think. Yes,
definitely. And okay, so what's your favorite item of clothing?
well, at the moment,
Why?
because it does quite a lot at the moment, my favorite item of clothing is, we did a wonderful tie-up with Lucinda Chambers, who used to be at Vogue when Alexandra Schulman was there. And we've just launched a new one, actually, but in the autumn we did this incredible, gorgeous, big, stripy, multicolored with big buttons down the side, a jumper dress. I love this jumper dress because you can put it on, it's one item, and you look completely ready to go. But it's really cozy, it's really warm. It I don't know, it's got a nostalgic feeling of when I was a teenager, and I think I bought a jumper dress from Miss Selfridge, and it was really cool. It's just a lovely item because it ticks both boxes, comfort, but you know, it's
great, isn't it? If you can just find a one item wonder that
exactly.
just does everything. Sounds great. I'd like one. And last question: if you could have dinner with anybody, anywhere, dead or alive, famous, not famous, who would it be and why?
Well,
Maybe either side
someone,
of you.
no, it's someone that springs to mind. I met recently. I mentioned that I'd been to Dubai to speak at a global retail conference, and I was very humbled to meet Tommy Hilfiger because he was the keynote speaker. He also spoke, being a perpetual student in fashion. You know, the Tommy Hilfiger runs a sort of a $15 billion global business, and yet he calls himself design principal. I had the pleasure of sitting next to him at a dinner.
How old is he?
He's about 74, I think.
Okay.
And he was the most he was a mixture of incredible knowledge, but amazing humility. And I'm always fascinated by people that always ask you about yourself rather than speaking about themselves.
Yes.
And I'm sure we've both come across people where they get to a certain stature career-wise, and they like to tell you all about themselves. But I had
specialists.
I had to ask him a lot about himself. It was just the most fascinating. You know, we were sort of there for a couple of hours, and it wasn't even long enough. You know, this global brand that he set up is, and I was most fascinated by the fact he was talking about avatars and AI and augmented reality. I mean, perhaps he could teach me a few things because I'm definitely behind on that one.
No, this AI thing is just, we've been sort of looking at it recently. It's extraordinary, spooky.
It's incredible.
It really is.
Yes, I think, I mean, a bit like none of us said 15 years ago we'd be buying things online. I think it's going to be one of those things that just becomes intuitive, actually, eventually.
Yeah,
To
become the norm.
incredible.
Yeah. Oh, Beth, thank you. It's fascinating hearing about your career.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
No, not at all. I think all the members will really love hearing from you and hearing all about Jigsaw and your whole career and everything.
I hope so.
No, they will, definitely. Thank you so, so much.
Absolute pleasure. And it's lovely to see you.
And you.